The verdant rice fields stretched out before the modest house where Grasya mourned the loss of her husband, Orlando. The air was heavy with the weight of grief as she sat with her two sons, Jonel and Justin, each grappling with the reality of their father's sudden passing. The loss had left an indelible mark on their lives, and a palpable silence filled the air, a constant reminder of the absence that now lingered in their home. Grasya tried to turn on the TV, hoping to distract herself and her sons, but the news about the recent nightmares haunted her, and she couldn't help but cry. Her youngest son, Justin, understanding his mother's pain, urged her to take a break, but the grief was a heavy burden that seemed impossible to shake. Later, as Jonel and Justin sought to lift their mother's spirits, the atmosphere in the house began to change. Jonel, struggling to come to terms with their father's death, attempted to distract himself by turning on the radio. However, the news that greeted them only served to deepen their unease, as a story about a tragic motorcycle accident echoed through the airwaves, leaving the family stricken with fear and uncertainty. As time passed, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon in the form of Nicole, Grasya's niece, who had returned from abroad. With her arrival, a new sense of purpose seemed to permeate the air, offering a beacon of light amidst the family's darkness. Nicole's vibrant energy injected a sense of optimism into the household, as her plans to open a cafeteria brought a new wave of excitement to the family. Grasya felt a surge of joy as she watched her niece embark on this new venture, one that held the promise of bringing prosperity and renewed hope to their lives. And as the cafeteria began to take shape, Grasya found herself sharing her cherished recipes with Nicole, eager to contribute to the success of the budding business. As Nicole's cafeteria flourished, Grasya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fragrant aromas of the dishes being prepared in the kitchen filled the air, and the sound of satisfied patrons enjoying their meals brought a sense of fulfillment that Grasya hadn't experienced in a long time. With each passing day, the bustling energy of the cafeteria seemed to infuse new life into their home, and the bond between Grasya, Nicole, and her sons grew stronger with each shared moment. Amidst the bustling activity of the cafeteria, the daily challenges and triumphs of running a business brought the family together in unexpected ways. Jonel found a sense of purpose as he threw himself into the work, and Justin, eager to contribute, offered his help whenever he could. The once somber atmosphere of their home was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity, filled with laughter, camaraderie, and a renewed sense of hope for the future. And as they worked tirelessly to build a thriving business, the memories of their father began to take on a different hue, one that celebrated his spirit and the love he had shared with them. The old wounds of grief slowly began to heal, as each member of the family found solace and strength in the newfound sense of purpose that had breathed life back into their home. Through the shared trials and triumphs of their everyday lives, the bonds between Grasya, her sons, and Nicole continued to strengthen, forming a tightly knit support system that transcended the pain of their past and ignited a flame of resilience within them. The days passed, and the family found themselves caught up in the rhythms of their new routine. Their days filled with the comforting familiarity of hard work, shared laughter, and the simple joy of coming together as a family. And as they looked toward the future, a sense of optimism and resilience began to blossom within them, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The cafeteria that Nicole opened was thriving. As the number of people coming in kept growing, she meticulously examined the cooks who applied, carefully tasting each dish to ensure the quality was just right. Customers were immediately drawn to her restaurant on the very first day, There was an air of excitement and anticipation at the prospect of discovering the culinary genius behind the delectable dishes. On one occasion, as Nicole was managing the bustling kitchen, Bibé, a woman known for her troublemaking nature, showed up and caused a scene, accusing Nicole of unfairness in her treatment of Jonel, her helper. Tensions escalated, fueled by a long-standing feud, as Grasya, Bibé, and Nicole engaged in a confrontation. Justin, Nicole's brother, intervened to protect his mother, but the situation quickly turned violent. The altercation shook Nicole deeply, leaving her unsettled and troubled. She couldn't shake off the emotional turmoil she felt after the encounter. Her peaceful haven had been breached, and she feared for the safety of her loved ones. The burden of running a successful business, while ensuring the safety of her family, took a toll on her, and she found it challenging to maintain her composure. Meanwhile, Justin was bewildered by the tense atmosphere at home. His concern for his family's well-being weighed heavily on his mind. The confrontation had left a lingering sense of vulnerability, and he struggled to come to terms with the reality of the situation. The fear of the unknown permeated his thoughts, shaking his usually steadfast demeanor. As the days passed, a series of strange events unraveled, adding to the air of unease that had descended upon the family. Nicole's inexplicable nighttime fall and the open doors throughout the house left them all feeling unnerved. A sense of foreboding crept into their hearts, and they grappled with the fear of a lurking force within the confines of their home. The atmosphere at the cafeteria also took a hit, as the once lively and warm establishment now carried an air of trepidation. The customers felt the tension that lingered in the air, and the once comfortable ambiance seemed to have shattered. One night, Justin's puzzling disappearance set off a panic within the household. Unable to locate him initially, their worry escalated until he was eventually found in the kitchen, completely unaware of their frantic search. His nonchalant attitude contrasted sharply with the concern and fear that had gripped the family, leaving everyone reeling from the bizarre turn of events. The underlying current of fear and anxiety continued to pervade their lives, leaving them on edge and churning with uncertainty. The once bustling cafeteria had become a place tinged with unease, and the family home was no longer the sanctuary it once was. Each passing day brought new challenges, further intensifying the emotional turmoil that had taken root within their lives. The weight of their collective fears hung heavy in the air, casting a shadow over their once vibrant existence. It was a typical, steamy evening in the small town where Grasya and her family lived. The heavy air enveloped the town, pressing down on the roofs of the humble houses and the dirt roads that wound through the community. Grasya was tired from a long day of selling her rice and serving her customers, but there was a heaviness in the air that she couldn't shake off. As she trudged wearily back to her home after a long day's work, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist around her, and an eerie feeling settled in the pit of her stomach. That night, as sleep embraced the town, Grasya was suddenly jolted awake by a deep hunger gnawing at her stomach. The tantalizing aroma of delicious food filled her dreams, and when she finally came to, she realized that she was ravenous. Her footsteps echoed through the dimly lit kitchen as she sought to satisfy her hunger, but to her dismay, there was nothing but rice. "Oh, it's all rice," she muttered to herself, the disappointment evident in her tired voice. Nonetheless, she cooked the rice and sat down to eat, the grainy sustenance doing little to appease her hunger. The night was not yet finished unraveling its mysteries. Grasya's son, Justin, appeared at the kitchen, fatigue etched into the lines of his face. Something was wrong, Grasya could feel it in her bones. "What happened to the two of you?" she pressed, concern evident in her voice. Justin spoke, his words heavy with fear and confusion. Justin woke up, Mom. He was on the floor. He said someone turned his bed sideways, and then his door was open. Grasya's heart raced as she tried to make sense of the bizarre events that were unfolding. "I almost had a nightmare, and my window in the bedroom was open," Justin's brother Jonel interjected, his voice trembling. "Then your bedroom window was also open," Grasya realized with a pang of fear. She had locked the window herself before she went to sleep, so how could it possibly have been open? "That means even if you closed it, someone still opened it," Justin declared, his eyes wide with disbelief. Grasya was struck with a sense of foreboding. "It's not me, Mom," Justin added, his voice barely above a whisper. Grasya's mind raced with worry and confusion. She struggled to comprehend the inexplicable events that were unfolding within the confines of her own home. "Your dad didn't come back. Someone came into our house, and if it wasn't a thief, it might have been a ghost," she declared, her mind reeling at the thought of such a chilling possibility. The weight of her words settled heavily in the air as she made a decision. "So, tonight, both of you, come sit next to me. Let's sleep in the same bed," she concluded, her voice trembling as she sought to protect her sons from the unseen forces that seemed to be encroaching upon their lives. As the night deepened, the sleepy silence of the town was disturbed by the gentle strains of a lullaby drifting out from Justin's room. Grasya, Justin, and Jonel huddled together, seeking solace in each other's presence as they tried to find respite from the lurking fear that had settled into their hearts. The night pressed on, each minute stretching into an eternity as they desperately clung to the semblance of safety that their fragile unity provided. Exhausted and on edge, Grasya found herself unable to find rest in the stillness of the night. The events of the evening haunted her thoughts, refusing to allow her mind to slip into the embrace of sleep. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, Grasya rose from her sleepless vigil, her weariness echoing in each deliberate movement. The weight of the night lingered in the air, refusing to dissipate as she confronted the new day, grasping at the remnants of her frayed composure. Her diner, usually bustling with the rhythmic hum of daily life, was abuzz with whispers and murmurs that morning. The news of Mang Victor's passing had spread like wildfire through the town, igniting conversations that crackled with an undercurrent of unease and disbelief. Grasya's eyes widened as she listened to the fragmented retellings of the events that had unfolded, her heart heavy with the weight of the town's shared fear and uncertainty. "The conversation at my diner today was about Mang Victor, who died last night," Grasya shared with her friend, Nicole, her voice quivering with apprehension. The air was thick with the weight of uncertainty as the collective fear of the town seeped into every interaction, casting a shadow over the normally jovial atmosphere. "My God, it's a nightmare too. My wife died in a nightmare. This is the third one this year. Then Victor is the fourth." Nicole's voice wavered with emotion as the harrowing reality of the situation settled in. The somber mood that had enveloped the town was punctuated by the collective introspection and fear that gripped the community, leaving Grasya and Nicole to grapple with their own concerns. "It seems like something bad is happening in the area," Grasya murmured, her voice laced with a tinge of disbelief. "Dogs howling last night, and then a while after my husband died, there was also a dog howling that night," a customer interjected, his words hanging heavily in the air. The weight of the unspoken fear settled heavily upon Grasya, as she grappled with the implications of the chilling events that had transpired within the confines of the town. The sense of unease that gripped the community was palpable, lingering like a sinister whisper that refused to be silenced. As the day stretched on, the weight of the unspoken fear settled heavily upon Grasya as she grappled with the implications of the chilling events that had transpired within the confines of the town. The sense of unease that gripped the community was palpable, lingering like a sinister whisper that refused to be silenced. The once familiar sights and sounds of the town seemed to be tainted by an undercurrent of dread, casting a shadow that refused to be dispelled. Grasya's heart weighed heavily in her chest as she navigated through the day, her thoughts consumed by the lingering fear that had woven itself into the fabric of the town's collective consciousness. The weight of the night, the haunting whispers that lingered in the air, and the palpable unease that hung over the town like a shroud of uncertainty, had cast a shadow over everyday life, leaving the once familiar streets and houses cloaked in an unfamiliar, foreboding atmosphere. And as the day began to wane, the weight of the unknown settled heavily upon Grasya's shoulders, leaving her to confront the creeping tendrils of fear that refused to be dispelled. In the midst of the growing unease that gripped the town, Grasya's diner buzzed with the familiar ebb and flow of daily life. The tantalizing aroma of her cooking filled the air, punctuating the heavy stillness that had settled over the community. Manong Ibe, a frequent patron of her diner, shared a warm exchange with Grasya, their voices a soothing respite from the whispers of fear that had woven themselves into the fabric of the town's consciousness. Grasya's heart swelled with a surge of gratitude as words of kindness and reassurance washed over her, offering a brief respite from the concerns and uncertainties that weighed heavily upon her heart. The tentative warmth of human connection and camaraderie provided a brief sanctuary amidst the encroaching shadows of fear that seemed to haunt the town. As the day stretched on, Grasya found herself entangled within the intricate web of daily life, her mind lingering on the lingering unease that cast a shadow over the community. Each step she took was weighted with a sense of foreboding, the heavy air of the town hanging heavily around her, like a suffocating embrace. The once familiar faces that greeted her were now tinged with an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, casting a distorted shadow over the fabric of her small community. The weight of the unspoken terror that gripped the town seemed to linger in the air, refusing to be dispelled. In the midst of the somber whispers and apprehensions that infiltrated the town, Grasya's thoughts were consumed by the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to permeate every aspect of daily life. The once familiar rhythms of the town were now overshadowed by an unfamiliar, foreboding atmosphere, leaving Grasya to grapple with the creeping tendrils of unease that refused to be shaken off. As the day drew to a close, the lingering echoes of fear and uncertainty that permeated the town seemed to cast a shadow over the once familiar sights and sounds, leaving Grasya to confront the encroaching sense of unease that had woven itself into the fabric of her community. The weight of the unknown settled heavily upon her shoulders as she tried to navigate through the day, grappling with the haunting whispers that lingered in the heavy, stagnant air. Amidst the thick silence of the town, the gentle hum of daily life in Grasya's diner served as a respite from the collective unease that permeated the community. The savory aromas of her cooking filled the air, offering a brief respite from the pervasive whispers of fear that seemed to hang heavily over the town. As Grasya moved through the familiar rhythms of her daily routine, her heart remained heavy with the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to have taken root within her small community. Each step she took felt burdened by the collective unease that had woven itself into the fabric of the town, leaving her to grapple with the encroaching tendrils of fear that seemed to linger in the heavy, stagnant air. In the midst of the uneasy whispers and apprehensions, Grasya found herself caught in the intricate web of daily life, her mind lingering on the deep-seated unease that cast a shadow over the community. The once familiar faces of her neighbors and customers now reflected an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, distorting the once familiar fabric of life in the town. Despite the creeping tendrils of unease that seemed to cling to every corner of the town, Grasya continued to move through the motions of her daily routine, seeking solace in the familiar rhythms of her diner. The savory scents of her cooking offered a fleeting respite from the heavy silence that hung over the town, enveloping her in a cocoon of warmth amidst the encroaching unease. As she navigated through the day, Grasya's thoughts were consumed by the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to have taken root within her small community. Each step she took felt weighed down by the collective unease that had woven itself into the fabric of the town, leaving her to grapple with the encroaching tendrils of fear that refused to be shaken off. The once familiar sights and sounds of the town were now tinged with an undercurrent of unease, casting a distorted shadow over the fabric of daily life. As the day drew to a close, the lingering echoes of fear and uncertainty that permeated the community seemed to cast a shadow over the once familiar rhythms of Grasya's life, leaving her to confront the creeping tendrils of unease that refused to be shaken off. In the hushed embrace of the town, Grasya's diner hummed with the gentle cadence of daily life, offering a haven from the encroaching unease that had taken root within the community. Amidst the savory aromas of her cooking, she sought refuge from the collective apprehension and whispers of fear that had woven themselves into the fabric of the town. As the day drew to a close, the lingering unease that had saturated the town seemed to cast a shadow over the once familiar sights and sounds, leaving Grasya to grapple with the creeping tendrils of unease that refused to be dispelled. Amidst the uneasy whispers and apprehensions, Grasya found herself entangled within the intricate web of daily life, her mind consumed by the weight of unspoken fear that cast a shadow over the community. The once familiar faces of her neighbors and customers now reflected an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, distorting the once familiar fabric of life in the town. As the day stretched on, the weight of unspoken fear settled heavily upon Grasya's shoulders, leaving her to navigate through the day, grappling with the encroaching tendrils of unease that refused to be shaken off. The once familiar rhythms of the town were now overshadowed by an unfamiliar, foreboding atmosphere, leaving Grasya to confront the creeping tendrils of unease that seemed to have woven themselves into the fabric of her small community. In the quiet lull of the town, Grasya's diner provided a brief respite from the weight of unspoken fear that hung heavily over the community. The gentle hum of daily life persisted amidst the heavy silence, offering a fleeting sanctuary from the collective unease that had taken root and refused to be dispelled. As the day drew to a close, the lingering echoes of fear and uncertainty that permeated the community seemed to cast a shadow over the once familiar rhythms of Grasya's life, leaving her to grapple with the creeping tendrils of unease that refused to be shaken off. As the day waned and silence settled over the town, the heavy air seemed to echo with the unspoken fear and uncertainty that clung to every corner of the community. The weight of the unknown hung heavily around Grasya, leaving her to navigate through the day, grappling with the haunting whispers that lingered in the heavy, stagnant air. In the midst of the uneasy whispers and apprehensions, Grasya found herself caught in the intricate web of daily life, her mind lingering on the deep-seated unease that cast a shadow over the community. The once familiar faces of her neighbors and customers now reflected an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, distorting the once familiar fabric of life in the town. As Grasya moved through the familiar rhythms of her daily routine, her heart remained heavy with the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to have taken root within her small community. Each step she took felt burdened by the collective unease that had woven itself into the fabric of the town, leaving her to grapple with the encroaching tendrils of fear that seemed to linger in the heavy, stagnant air. Amidst the thick silence of the town, the gentle hum of daily life in Grasya's diner served as a respite from the collective unease that permeated the community. The savory aromas of her cooking filled the air, offering a brief respite from the pervasive whispers of fear that seemed to hang heavily over the town. As Grasya moved through the familiar rhythms of her daily routine, her heart remained heavy with the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to have taken root within her small community. Each step she took felt burdened by the collective unease that had woven itself into the fabric of the town, leaving her to grapple with the encroaching tendrils of fear that seemed to linger in the heavy, stagnant air. In the midst of the heavy silence that had settled over the town, Grasya found refuge in the gentle hum of daily life that persisted within the walls of her diner. The savory scents of her cooking offered a fleeting comfort amidst the encroaching unease that seemed to have taken root within the community. As the day drew to a close, the lingering echoes of fear and uncertainty that permeated the community seemed to cast a shadow over the once familiar rhythms of Grasya's life, leaving her to confront the creeping tendrils of unease that refused to be shaken off. The weight of unspoken fear hung heavily over Grasya as she moved through the familiar rhythms of her daily routine, the collective unease of the town penetrating every corner of her small community. Each step she took was overshadowed by the lingering sense of unease that seemed to have taken root within the familiar fabric of her town. Amidst the thick silence of the town, the gentle hum of daily life in Grasya's diner served as a respite from the collective unease that permeated the community. The savory aromas of her cooking filled the air, offering a brief respite from the pervasive whispers of fear that seemed to hang heavily over the town. As Grasya moved through the familiar rhythms of her daily routine, her heart remained heavy with the weight of unspoken fear that seemed to have taken root within her small community. Each step she took felt burdened by the collective unease that had woven itself into the fabric of the town, leaving her to grapple with the encroaching tendrils of fear that seemed to linger in the heavy, stagnant air. The night was unusually dark, the shadows stretching like ominous fingers across the small, rural community. The moon was hidden behind a blanket of thick clouds, contributing to the darkness that enveloped the area. The air was thick with tension as the village seemed to hold its breath, as though aware of the lurking danger that hid in the blackness of the night. In the midst of this eerie stillness, a small, humble house stood, its windows shut tight and its doors securely locked. Inside, a single mother, Grasya, toiled tirelessly to feed her family and ailing elderly mother. Her eldest son, Jonel, lay asleep in his room while his younger brother, Justin, kept himself awake, fearful of the nightmares that haunted him after dark. Despite the fear that often gnawed at her, Grasya still felt a sense of duty toward a troubled young boy named May, who lived in the same village. She often welcomed him into her home, fed him, and sent food for his grandmother, even though fear lingered as she dealt with this troubled child. But on this particular night, a sense of unease hung heavy in the air. The howling of the neighborhood dogs only added to her anxiety. It was unsettling, to say the least, and Grasya struggled to calm her nerves. She lay awake in bed, her mind racing with thoughts and fears. As the howling continued, she couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine. Her unease escalated when Jonel, her eldest son, seemed to be dreaming fitfully in his room. His agitated cries pierced the silence, sending chills down Grasya's spine once more. "Jonel, son, answer me," she called out, her voice tinged with urgency. Her heart raced with fright, and she desperately needed the key to his room. She quickly made her way to her own bedroom, fumbling to retrieve the keys to unlock the doors in the house, her hands shaking with trepidation. Upon her return to Jonel's room, she rushed to open the door, only to find it inexplicably stuck. Panic surged through her veins as she pushed with all her might, the weight of something heavy resisting her efforts. "Jonel, what's blocking the door?" she called out in desperation, her voice echoing with a mix of fear and determination. Amidst the struggle, Justin, her younger son, joined her in the frantic effort to open his brother's door. As the two of them pushed against the obstacle, the sound of something breaking and falling to the floor sent an eerie chill down their spines. Their combined strength finally managed to push through, and the door swung open, revealing a terrifying sight. Jonel lay on the bed, writhing in obvious pain, as though being strangled by an invisible force. Grasya's heart plummeted to her stomach at the sight, her entire being paralyzed with a sense of helplessness and terror. She called out to Justin, urging him to fetch salt, garlic, and a knife from the kitchen as she continued to push against the unseen force that held her son captive. The scene almost seemed unreal as Jonel's pained moans reverberated through the air, coupled with the frantic chatter of the two siblings trying to combat the unfathomable entity that threatened their family. In a sudden burst of courage, Grasya plunged the knife into the unseen force, her hands shaking uncontrollably as fear and determination mingled within her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to falter, even as she felt the ghostly presence turn its gaze toward her. When the spectral grip finally released its hold on Jonel, his mother's entire being surged with a mix of relief and unrelenting dread. The apparition vanished, leaving behind a chilling parting warning that sent shivers down their spines. Yet, despite the palpable terror that gripped the family, they found solace in being alive and together. In the aftermath, as Grasya saw to her son's injuries, tending to the long cuts on his neck with a heavy heart, she couldn't help but wonder at the supernatural puzzle that haunted their lives. The following morning, as they interacted with their neighbor, Nicole, and she noticed Jonel's wounds, their story of the previous night's encounter with the supernatural unfolded, leaving Nicole visibly concerned for the family's well-being. As Grasya listened to the tale of the eerie encounter, she couldn't help but sense an underlying tension between Jonel and Nicole. the subtle nuances not escaping her keen senses. Despite the lingering fear, they tried to carry on with their daily routines. As Grasya tended to Maymay, she couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for the blind girl and the difficult circumstances she found herself in. Her heart ached for the young girl's struggles, and she did her best to provide for her and her grandmother, understanding the hardships they faced. Their conversation veered toward the supernatural elements that seemed to plague their village, with Maymay sharing tales of the Bat, a formidable ghost that haunted their community, feeding into the newfound unease surrounding them. With Maymay's disturbing revelation about the Bat, which was feared to be haunting them, Grasya's heart skipped a beat. As Maymay burst into tears upon holding their deceased neighbor's pillow, the sinister truth seemed to unravel, sending a chill down Grasya's spine. The mention of the Bat unleashed a torrent of memories in Grasya's mind. She remembered the tales her mother used to tell her, chilling legends that were meant to keep children indoors after dark. Tales of vengeful spirits who preyed on the vulnerable, extracting a heavy toll for their intrusion into the spirit realm. Despite her own skepticism, a sense of foreboding settled over Grasya as the realization dawned that they might indeed be grappling with a malevolent force far beyond their comprehension. As the day turned to dusk, Grasya couldn't shake off the unease that had settled within her. The once familiar household now seemed cloaked in a spectral shroud, every creak and whistle of the wind carrying a weighty significance. She was determined to protect her family and seek answers to the unsettling events that had unfolded. That night, as the family huddled together in the living room in a desperate attempt to find solace in each other's presence, a palpable tension hung in the air. Grasya's mind raced with a myriad of troubling thoughts, while Jonel and Justin's eyes betrayed the same mixture of fear and determination that marked their mother's countenance. The clock ticked ominously, each passing minute carrying a heavy burden of dread. The howling of the wind outside seemed to hold the promise of an impending storm, mirroring the turmoil that raged within the confines of their home. As they sought refuge in the flickering glow of the kerosene lamp, a sudden commotion arose outside, interrupting the oppressive silence that had settled over them. With trepidation etched on their faces, the family members exchanged fearful glances, bracing themselves for what felt like an inevitable confrontation with the unknown. Grasya, fueled by a mother's unwavering love, steeled herself for the struggle ahead, drawing strength from the unwavering determination that burned within her. She clutched the rosary around her neck, offering silent prayers for guidance and protection, her steadfast resolve radiating out in the form of a protective shield around her loved ones. As the echoes of an otherworldly wail pierced the night, a shudder ran through their spines, a haunting reminder of the malevolent force that had encroached upon their once peaceful existence. Each soul braced themselves for the inevitable clash, their collective will to overcome the inexplicable terror binding them together in an unbreakable bond. In that moment, amidst the tumultuous storm that raged both within and without, they found strength in one another, buoyed by the unyielding power of their familial love. As the battle against the unrelenting darkness loomed ahead, they stood united, ready to face the formidable adversary that lurked in the shadows, each beating heart resonating with an unspoken promise that they would weather the tempest together, emerging unscathed on the other side, their spirits unbroken. In the heart of a small village nestled among the lush, rolling hills and serene rivers, the tranquil existence of a woman named Grasya and her two children, Justin and Jonel, was shattered by the malevolent presence of a terrifying entity known as BAGONG. This sinister force had stolen the body of Mang Orlando, Grasya's husband, plunging the village into a state of fear and confusion. The true fate of Mang Orlando remained a haunting mystery, leaving Grasya's heart aching with grief and helplessness as she witnessed her children's innocence being shattered by the inexplicable loss. The memories of May, a young boy who had attempted to glimpse the real identity of BAGONG, still clung to Grasya's mind like a suffocating fog. She vividly recalled the haunting sight of May witnessing the horrifying devouring of a body by the malevolent force, an image that etched trauma and horror into his young eyes. Grasya found herself embracing the shaken boy, her own heart heavy with fear and guilt, feeling the weight of the village's turmoil bearing down on her tired shoulders. Once, the tranquil beauty of the village had offered solace to Grasya, but now the picturesque landscape felt suffocating as the unknown terror of BAGONG haunted her every waking moment. Each step she took carried the heavy burden of her emotions, her spirit weighed down by the relentless thoughts of her husband's fate. Even the most mundane tasks took on new dimensions of anguish in the wake of the tragedy. Simple acts, like cooking rice, became Herculean efforts, her trembling hands struggling to maintain a facade of normalcy for her children. The neighbors' mundane chatter about business ventures and vendors seemed starkly inconsequential, echoing hollowly in her ears amidst the deep pain she carried within. The burden of unfathomable revelations only added another layer of anguish as Grasya grappled with the truth of her husband's demise. The weight of carrying this knowledge felt unbearable, and she sought solace in confiding in a trusted friend, Nicole, as they grappled with the overwhelming emotions and uncertainties that lay ahead. Suffocating under the relentless presence of BAGONG, the air itself felt heavy with unspoken terror, leaving Grasya breathless with a sense of impending doom that seemed to loom over the village. The once tranquil evenings, which had offered respite from the chaos of the day, now felt fraught with unease. The setting sun cast long, ominous shadows, and the once familiar village paths seemed shrouded in an eerie darkness. Every rustling leaf and distant murmur set her on edge, igniting an unshakable fear that gnawed at her very soul. The tragic turn of events unfolded like scenes from a nightmare, with Grasya's life unraveling into a cruel, unrecognizable reality. Every emotion, every interaction, and every instance became a part of her story, etched with raw pain and unspoken despair. The grueling captivity that followed, as Grasya found herself bound and gagged, thrust her into a hellish nightmare. The suffocating darkness and the weight of her restraints mirrored the indescribable anguish that consumed her spirit, leaving her grappling with a profound sense of helplessness and despair. In the midst of her captivity, Grasya's mind raced with overwhelming questions that gnawed at her, echoing the unspoken fears that threatened to consume her. The agony of not knowing her children's whereabouts, her isolation, and the terrifying uncertainty of her fate weighed heavily on her fragile frame. When Grasya realized the extent of the deception that had ensnared her, a profound sense of betrayal and dismay engulfed her. The heartache of being used as a pawn in a sinister plan left her shattered, her spirit teetering at the brink of hopelessness. The eventual escape from her nightmarish imprisonment offered a fleeting moment of relief, but her desperate flight back home was fraught with uncertainty and dread. Every step, every turn, was accompanied by the relentless fear that she was merely fleeing from one horror to another, her heart pounding with harrowing uncertainty as she approached her children. The tearful reunion with her children, enveloped in their fearful concern and unwavering love, mirrored the raw emotions that surged through Grasya's veins. Their words of worry and reassurance, coupled with the warmth of their embrace, offered a glimmer of solace in the midst of overwhelming turmoil. The tender moments of forgiveness and understanding that followed as she confided the truth about the sinister forces that had preyed upon their lives were tinged with bittersweet poignancy. The fragile threads of familial closeness, woven with love and forgiveness, offered a momentary respite from the unyielding tide of despair. The piercing screams that shattered the stillness of the night as Grasya's youngest son grappled with the unyielding force of BAGONG, unfolded like a scene from a harrowing nightmare. The terror that enveloped her as she fought to protect her children from an otherworldly menace spoke volumes of the sacrifices a mother was willing to make for her beloved offspring. The gut-wrenching fear that coursed through her veins as she watched her sons grapple with the malevolent force that threatened to engulf them echoed the primal instinct of a mother protecting her young. Every breath, every heartbeat reverberated with an unspoken determination and unconditional love that defined her motherhood. The fierce battle against the unearthly entity, waged with the tendrils of mystical vines and ancient incantations, unfolded like a cacophony of raw emotion and unyielding resolve. The cries, the whispers, and the unwavering prayers that filled the night air were a testament to the unbreakable spirit that bound them together in the face of unimaginable terror. Amidst the tumultuous chaos that unfolded in the silent hours of the night, Grasya found herself grappling with an ineffable mixture of emotions. The triumph of protecting her children was interwoven with the indelible scars etched upon her heart, a poignant testimony to the enduring resilience that defined her spirit. In the wake of the harrowing battles that had unfolded, the village emerged from the grip of terror, shrouded in an aura of weary relief. The scars of the ordeal were etched deep within Grasya's soul, and the haunted whispers of the night carried the weight of their shared sacrifices and unwavering perseverance. The dawn of a new day, tinged with the fragile promise of healing and renewal, offered a semblance of hope amidst the raw wounds that had yet to mend. The gentle caress of the morning sun, as it bathed the village in a golden glow, held within it the collective resilience and unyielding fortitude that had defined their shared journey through darkness. The echoes of their harrowing ordeal lingered in the air, interwoven with the unspoken whispers of gratitude and resilience that threaded through the village. Every step, every breath, carried within it the silent acknowledgement of the shared bond that had weathered the storm of malevolent forces, leaving them irrevocably changed, yet steadfast in their resolve. Grasya's story, etched with the unyielding trials and raw emotions that had unfolded, resonated beyond the confines of the village. It embodied the unbreakable spirit of a mother, the enduring bond of family, and the resilience that transcended the realms of the ordinary, leaving an indelible imprint upon the tapestry of their lives. As the dark clouds loomed over the village, the wind carried a sense of unease, stirring up the fallen leaves and sending shivers down the spine of anyone caught in its path. The small community was nestled between rolling green hills, with quaint little houses that held both joy and sorrow within their walls. Jonel, a man with a hardened exterior, stood in the heart of the village, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his heart heavy with grief and rage. "You animals," Jonel muttered through clenched teeth. "You will pay for what you did to me. You will pay, and tonight I will avenge my son whom you killed. I will also avenge you killing my father, you animal." His pain and anger radiated from him like a dark aura, consuming him, fueling his need for retribution. With a heavy heart, he made his way to confront the source of his torment, a man known as Manong Ibe. The encounter was a clash of emotions, a collision of hate and suffering. As Jonel lashed out with every strike of his whip, the pain in his heart writhed with each blow, mirroring the agony he sought to inflict upon the perpetrator of his despair. Manong Ibe's defense was relentless, the air filled with the sounds of their struggle. Meanwhile, Mei, a young girl with innocent eyes, watched the confrontation with a mixture of fear and determination. As the tension escalated, her grandmother's concerned gaze fell upon her. "My God, your nose is bleeding, Mei," she cried out, her voice filled with worry and helplessness. Mei's mind was clouded with a primal energy, an uncontrollable force building inside her as she muttered incoherent words. Her body trembled, and fear lingered in her eyes as blood trickled from her nose. "What are we going to do? You don't want to stop. It seems like there is too much energy you are letting go." Her grandmother's voice was tinged with desperation and fear as she struggled to restrain Mei, who seemed to be channeling an otherworldly power. The scene unfolded with an intensity that gripped the onlookers. Jonel's eyes burned with ferocity as he gazed upon the chaos, his mind clouded with a singular determination to put an end to the torment that had plagued their lives for far too long. The conflict reached its climax, culminating in a final, decisive blow that brought an abrupt end to the struggle. With the dust settling, the village was left in a state of shock and disbelief. Mei lay exhausted, drained from the unearthly forces that had surged through her. The once ferocious energy that had consumed her now ebbed away, leaving her weakened and vulnerable. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily upon the villagers as they grappled with the aftermath. Manong Ibe, somber and resolute, contemplated the consequences of their actions as he tended to Mei's fallen grandmother. He was too weak to pour energy into that ghost. That's why he couldn't handle it. "He sacrificed his life to help us," he uttered with a heavy heart. The village mourned the loss of the elder, a dedicated guardian whose valiant sacrifice had cost him his life. The community rallied together, offering solace to Mei as she gradually awoke from her ordeal. Tears flowed freely, a symbol of the shared pain and resilience that bound them all in their time of need. In the wake of the tragedy, Jonel and Manong Ibe endeavored to lay the old man to rest, ensuring his final moments were honored with dignity and respect. The weight of their actions hung heavy in the air as they grappled with the moral and legal implications of their actions. In a solemn act of closure, they laid the old man to rest, their hearts heavy with grief and regret. As the days passed, the village began to heal, finding solace in the companionship and support of their fellow inhabitants. Bonds were forged, and wounds, both seen and unseen, were tended with care and compassion. Mei found a new home under the watchful eye of Grasya, finding comfort and belonging in the arms of her newfound guardian. The passage of time brought about a change in Jonel, softening the hardened edges of his heart. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, a transformation took place. a quiet evolution that ushered in forgiveness and understanding. His relationship with Nicole, the woman who had stood steadfast by his side, blossomed into one of mutual respect and understanding. After much perseverance, Jonel and Nicole's bond grew stronger, paving the way for a new chapter in their lives. Their love bore fruit in the form of their firstborn, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love. As the village found peace once more, with the scars of the past serving as a reminder of their shared strength and resilience, Jonel's voice echoed with gratitude and hope. Miss Claire and Sir Jay, thank you for airing my story. More power to your channels. With those words, he bore witness to the triumph of the human spirit and the enduring legacy of love that bound them all together.